They say grief changes you. It certainly changed me. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for the day my ex-husband's new wife, with a smirk so greedy it could curdle milk, walked into my father's garden and declared, "We're here for our rightful share. Move out. Immediately." She thought she had me cornered, but what she didn't know, my brilliant, incredible father had left one last, deadly surprise. And my lawyer was already standing right behind her. The morning dew still clung to the roses, glistening like tiny diamonds, when I heard the crunch of expensive heels on my garden path. I didn't even need to look up to know who it was. Only one person would dare to wear Louboutins to stomp through my father's prize garden. Haley, still playing in the dirt, I see. Her voice, a syrupy concoction of fake sweetness, dripped with condescension. I continued pruning my father's white roses, the ones he'd planted for my wedding day. The wedding that had ended in divorce papers and my ex-husband, Holden, running off with this very woman now standing behind me. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. "Hello, Maddie. You know why I'm here." She moved closer, her shadow falling across the delicate flower bed. "The reading of the will is tomorrow. And Holden, and I think it's best if we discuss things civilly." I finally turned around, wiping my soil-covered hands on my gardening apron. "There's nothing to discuss. This is my father's house." "His estate was," Haley corrected, her perfectly painted red lips curling into a smug smile. "And since Holden was like a son to Miles for 15 years, we believe we're entitled to our fair share." The pruning shears in my hand suddenly felt heavier, the cold steel a stark contrast to the burning rage inside me. The same Holden who cheated on me, his wife, with his secretary? That Holden. Ancient history. Haley waved a manicured hand dismissively. Miles forgave him. They still played golf every Sunday until... She paused, a calculated, dramatic effect. "Well, you know." My father's death was still raw, a wound that hadn't even begun to scab over. He'd been gone just weeks, and here was this woman, this vulture, circling what she thought was easy prey. "My father wouldn't have left Holden anything," I said firmly, standing up to my full height. "He was many things, but he wasn't stupid." Haley's fake smile faltered. "We'll see about that. Your brother, Isaiah, seems to think differently." The mention of my brother sent a chill down my spine. We hadn't spoken since Dad's funeral, where he'd spent more time consoling Holden than his own sister. "You've spoken to Isaiah?" "Oh, honey." Haley stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We've done more than speak. He's been very helpful." I gripped the pruning shears tighter, remembering Dad's words from years ago. Asterisk, the roses need a firm hand, Maddie, but never a cruel one. Even the sharpest thorn serves a purpose. Asterisk, get off my property, Haley, I said quietly. "Before I forget my manners?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your property? That's cute. This house is worth millions, Maddie. Did you really think you'd get to keep it all to yourself? Playing house in your daddy's mansion while the rest of us get nothing." "My father built this house brick by brick," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "He planted every tree, designed every room. This isn't about money. This is about legacy." "Legacy." Haley snorted. "Wake up, Maddie. Everything is about money. And tomorrow, when that will is read, you're going to learn that the hard way." She turned to leave, but paused at the garden gate. "Oh, and you might want to start packing. Holden and I will need at least a month to renovate before we move in." As her heels clicked down the path, I looked down at the roses. Their white petals were now spotted with soil where my trembling hands had crushed them. Dad had always said white roses represented new beginnings. But all I could see was red. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person I knew would understand. "Aaliyah, it's me. Haley just paid me a visit." "Yeah, she's exactly as bad as we thought. Can you come over? There's something about the will I need to discuss with you." My best friend's voice was firm and reassuring. "I'll be there in minutes." "Don't worry, Maddie. Your father was smarter than they know." As I ended the call, I noticed a small envelope poking out from beneath one of the rose bushes, its corner damp with dew. The handwriting on it was unmistakably my father's, and it was addressed to me. I picked it up with shaking hands, wondering how long it had been waiting there, hidden among the thorns. The paper felt heavy, like it carried more than just words. "Well, Dad," I whispered, turning the envelope over in my hands. "Looks like you left me one last surprise." The sound of Haley's car engine faded into the distance as I stood in the garden, holding what felt like the first piece of a puzzle my father had left behind. Whatever game Haley and Holden were playing, I had a feeling they were about to learn they'd chosen the wrong opponent. Aaliyah arrived exactly when she promised, her legal briefcase in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "I figured we might need this," she said, holding up the wine as she walked into Dad's study. I was still holding the unopened envelope, perched on the edge of my father's leather chair. The room smelled of his pipe tobacco and old books, a scent I wasn't ready to lose to Haley's promised renovations. "You haven't opened it yet?" Aaliyah nodded at the envelope, setting her briefcase down with a heavy thunk. "I wanted to wait for you," I admitted, after what Haley said about Isaiah helping them. "Open it," Aaliyah insisted, pouring 2 generous glasses of wine. "Your father was very specific about certain things being revealed at certain times." My head snapped up. "What do you mean?" She handed me a glass. "Open the letter, Maddie." With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small key. "Dear Maddie," I read aloud, my father's voice echoing in my head. "If you're reading this, then someone has already made a move on the estate. Knowing human nature as I do, I'm guessing it's Haley. She always did remind me of a shark, all teeth and no soul." Aaliyah snorted into her wine glass. "The key enclosed opens the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, you'll find everything you need to protect what's yours. Remember what I taught you about chess. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a pawn to protect the queen. Love, Dad." I looked up at Aaliyah, who was already moving toward the desk. "You knew about this?" "I helped him set it up," she admitted, gesturing for me to use the key. "Your father came to me months ago, right after his diagnosis. He knew exactly how things would play out." The drawer opened with a soft click. Inside was a thick manila envelope and a USB drive. "Before you look at those," Aaliyah said, sitting on the edge of the desk, "there's something you need to know about tomorrow's will reading. Your father added a codicil 3 days before he died." "A what?" "A modification to the will. And trust me, it's going to change everything." I spread the contents of the manila envelope across the desk. Photos spilled out. Dozens of them. Haley meeting with someone in a dark parking lot. Holden entering a lawyer's office that wasn't Aaliyah's. Bank statements. Email printouts. Dad had them investigated? Better. Aaliyah's smile was sharp. He had them followed. That USB drive contains video footage of Haley attempting to bribe your father's nurse for information about his will 2 days before he died. My hands shook as I picked up one of the photos. Is that Isaiah meeting with Haley? 3 weeks before your father's death, Aaliyah confirmed. But look at his face in the next photo. The second photo showed my brother leaving the meeting, his expression twisted with disgust. He was holding what looked like a check. He kept the check as evidence, Aaliyah explained. Brought it straight to your father. That's when Miles knew he had to act fast. But Haley said Isaiah was helping them. Your brother's been playing a dangerous game, Maddie. Feeding them just enough information to keep them confident, all while helping your father gather evidence of their conspiracy. I sank back into the chair, my mind spinning. Why didn't he tell me? Because Haley needed to show her hand first. Aaliyah pulled out some papers from her briefcase. Tomorrow, when I read the will, Haley and Holden are going to think they've won. The initial reading will grant them a significant portion of the estate. What? I stood up so fast my wine glass tipped over, staining the carpet red. Let me finish. Aaliyah held up her hand. That's when the codicil kicks in. Your father set up a trap, Maddie. The moment they accept the inheritance, they trigger a clause that reveals their attempted manipulation and fraud. Everything. The photos, the videos, the bribes, it all becomes public record. I stared at the evidence spread across the desk, understanding dawning. He made them think they won, so they'd incriminate themselves. Exactly. Aaliyah's grin was triumphant. The real will leaves everything to you, with a trust set up for Isaiah. Haley and Holden get nothing, except a very public exposure of their true characters. And tomorrow? Aaliyah finished her wine. We watched them walk right into the trap they set for themselves. Your father's last lesson about consequences. I picked up his letter again, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. Even from beyond the grave, he was protecting me, teaching me, helping me fight back. One more thing, Aaliyah said softly. Isaiah asked to see you tonight. He has something else you need to know before tomorrow. I looked out the study window at the setting sun, thinking of my brother, of Haley's smug face in the garden, of all the pieces my father had carefully put in place. Tell him to come over, I said. It's time we had a family reunion. Isaiah arrived after dark, looking nothing like the confident brother who'd stood beside Holden at the funeral. His designer suit was wrinkled, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He hesitated at the study doorway, clutching a leather portfolio like a shield. You look terrible, I said, breaking the ice. Yeah, well, playing double agent isn't as fun as the movies make it seem. He attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Can I come in? I gestured to the chair across from me. Aaliyah had left an hour ago, but the evidence of our earlier discovery still littered Dad's desk. I see you found Dad's insurance policy, Isaiah said, nodding at the photos. Why didn't you tell me what you were doing? The question came out sharper than I intended. He slumped into the chair. Because I needed to make it right. After everything with Holden, the way I treated you during the divorce. I was an idiot, Maddie. You were my brother, I corrected. You were supposed to be on my side. I know. He opened the portfolio and pulled out a check. This is what Haley offered me to testify that Dad wasn't a sound mind when he made his final will. $500,000 to betray my own sister. I stared at the check, then at my brother. But you didn't cash it. No. I took it straight to Dad. Isaiah's voice cracked. You should have seen his face, Maddie. Not angry, just disappointed. That's when he told me about his plan. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 7 times, each dong echoing through the tense silence. There's more, Isaiah continued, pulling out a phone. I recorded everything. Every meeting, every offer, every threat. He pressed play. Haley's voice filled the room. Asterisk, once the old man kicks it, we'll contest the will with your testimony about his mental state and Holden's long relationship with him. We'll get everything. That Maddie won't know what hit her. Asterisk. My hands clenched into fists. When was this? 2 months ago. But wait, there's worse. He fast-forwarded the recording. Holden's voice now. Asterisk, we sell the house. Liquidate the assets. Maddie can go back to her little apartment and her pathetic gardening business. She never deserved any of this anyway. Asterisk. Turn it off, I whispered. Isaiah complied, then pulled out one final document. This is why I came tonight. Haley didn't just want the money, Maddie. She wanted revenge. On you. Revenge for what? For making Holden feel guilty. For making him pay alimony. He paused. For making him look bad when you caught them together. The memory hit me like a physical blow, walking into my own bedroom, finding them there. Haley's triumphant smile as my marriage crumbled. She was his secretary for 3 years, Isaiah continued. She planned everything, worked her way into his life, into Dad's social circle. This document proves she started embezzling from Dad's company 6 months before you caught them. I snatched the paper, scanning the bank transfers and account numbers. Dad knew about this? Found out right before his diagnosis. That's when he started planning this instead. Isaiah's voice trailed off. Sometimes justice needs a different path. The codicil. I murmured. Yeah. Tomorrow's going to be brutal, Maddie. They think they've got it all figured out. Haley's even hired a camera crew to document the historic moment when they take possession of the estate. Despite everything, I laughed. She hired cameras to record her own downfall? Dad would have appreciated the irony. Isaiah smiled, a real one this time. Listen, I know I can't fix the past 3 years with one night of revelations. But I want you to know, I'm here now. Whatever happens tomorrow, I've got your back. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Dad's garden, silvered by moonlight. Remember when we were kids and Dad caught us fighting over that toy car? The red Corvette. Isaiah joined me at the window. He made us wash every window in the house. Said we needed to learn to see things clearly. I turned to face my brother. I see clearly now, Isaiah. I see what Dad was trying to teach us, even at the end. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. That sometimes the biggest victory isn't in winning. It's in letting your enemies defeat themselves. I finished his thought. The grandfather clock chimed 1/4 past, reminding us that tomorrow was getting closer with each tick. You should get some rest, Isaiah said, gathering his evidence. Tomorrow's going to be one hell of a show. As I watched him leave, I touched the window pane, cool and solid under my fingers. Dad had always loved these windows. Said they were the eyes of the house, watching over his family. Tomorrow, they would witness justice served exactly the way he had planned it. The morning of the will reading dawned bright and clear. I was in Dad's study again, this time watching Aaliyah arrange papers on the massive oak desk while camera equipment was set up around the room. Haley's camera crew is here, Isaiah announced, slipping through the door. You should see her out there, practicing her gracious acceptance speech. Everything ready? I asked Aaliyah. She patted her briefcase. All set. The codicil is sealed in this envelope, along with copies of all the evidence. Once they accept the initial terms. A commotion in the hallway cut her off. Haley's voice carried through the door, high and excited. This is where we'll put the new chandelier. The old one is so dated. Places, everyone, Aaliyah muttered, straightening her suit jacket. Let the show begin. Haley swept in first, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Holden followed, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. The camera crew trailed behind them, adjusting lights and checking angles. Maddie. Holden nodded stiffly. It was the first time he'd spoken to me directly since the divorce. Let's begin, Aaliyah announced, taking her place behind Dad's desk. As Miles Harrison's attorney, I'll be reading his last will and testament, along with any additional documents he prepared before his passing. Haley practically bounced in her seat. We're ready. The initial reading went exactly as Aaliyah had warned me. Dad's estate, including the house and company shares, was to be divided 60% to me, 40% to Holden and Haley. I knew it. Haley squealed, grabbing Holden's arm. Miles loved us too much to leave us out. However, Aaliyah continued, her voice cutting through Haley's premature celebration. There is a codicil to the will, added 3 days before Miles's death. Haley's smile faltered. A what? A modification, Holden explained, suddenly looking nervous. What kind of modification? Aaliyah broke the seal on the envelope. The acceptance of any inheritance under this will is contingent upon a full investigation into certain financial irregularities discovered in the months preceding Miles's death. The room went silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. What irregularities? Haley's voice had lost its triumphant edge. Perhaps these will explain, Aaliyah said, sliding the photos across the desk. Or this USB drive containing footage of attempted bribery. Or these bank statements showing systematic embezzlement from Harrison Industries. Holden grabbed one of the photos, his face draining of color. Where did you get these? Dad had quite the collection of evidence. Isaiah spoke up from his corner, his voice calm but lethal. Including recordings of you both planning to contest the will based on false testimony about his mental state. Haley stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. Turn those cameras off. Now. Oh, no, I said, standing to face her. The cameras stay. You wanted to document this historic moment, remember? You can't do this, she hissed. Holden, tell them they can't do this. But Holden was still staring at the photos, particularly one showing him entering a competitor's office with confidential company documents. The codicil is quite clear, Aaliyah continued, professional as ever. Any attempt to claim inheritance automatically triggers the release of all this evidence to the proper authorities. The choice is yours. Choice. Haley laughed hysterically. What choice? You've trapped us. No, I corrected her. You trapped yourselves. Every scheme, every plot, every attempt to steal what wasn't yours, it all led to this moment. This is your fault, she whirled on Isaiah. You were supposed to help us. Isaiah shrugged. I did help. Just not you. Holden, she pleaded. Do something. But Holden was already standing, straightening his tie with shaking hands. It's over, Haley. We've lost. The hell it is. I won't let that win. That is my daughter. Dad's voice filled the room. Everyone froze as Aaliyah pressed play on a video file. Dad's face appeared on one of the camera crew's monitors, thin but determined. And if you're watching this, it means you've shown your true colors, just as I knew you would. Greed is a terrible teacher, but consequences are excellent students. Haley's mascara ran in black streaks as she backed toward the door. This isn't over. Actually, Aaliyah said. It is. The police are waiting in the foyer to discuss the evidence of embezzlement. I'd suggest cooperating. It might help with sentencing. As Haley and Holden were led away, the cameras still rolling, I felt Dad's presence in every corner of the room. He'd orchestrated it all. Not just to protect his legacy, but to teach one final lesson about justice and patience. Well, Isaiah said into the silence, I guess those cameras caught their historic moment after all. The media circus that followed was exactly what Haley had wanted, just not in the way she'd planned. By evening, local news vans lined the street, and my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with calls from reporters. You need to see this, Isaiah said, turning up the volume on Dad's old television in the study. Haley's arrest was playing on every channel, her mascara-streaked face a stark contrast to her designer dress, as officers led her to a police car. The investigation into Harrison Industries has uncovered multiple instances of fraud, the reporter's voice droned on. Turn it off, I said, rubbing my temples. I can't watch anymore. Aaliyah burst through the door, waving her phone. It gets better. The DA just called. They found offshore accounts, dummy corporations, everything. Haley wasn't just stealing from your father's company. She was running a whole network of fraud schemes. And Holden? I asked, not sure why I still cared about my ex-husband's fate. Singing like a canary, Isaiah replied. Turns out he's not so loyal when facing serious prison time. A sharp knock at the study door made us all jump. A police detective entered, looking apologetic. Miss Harrison, we need to discuss some additional evidence we've uncovered. More? I gestured for him to sit. What now? We found documents in Miss West's apartment suggesting this wasn't her first attempt at this type of scheme. There are at least 3 other cases of her targeting wealthy families, though she never succeeded on this scale before. Aaliyah leaned forward. Other families? Yes. She would typically work her way into their lives through employment or social connections, then orchestrate situations to gain access to their assets. The detective pulled out a folder. Sound familiar? The secretary position. I whispered. It wasn't random. No, it wasn't. She specifically targeted your ex-husband because of his connection to your father's company. The affair was just her way in. My stomach churned. 3 years of blame and self-doubt about my failed marriage suddenly shifted perspective. There's something else, the detective continued. We found this in her personal files. It appears to be a detailed plan for after she gained control of the estate. He handed me a document that made my blood run cold. Detailed notes about accidents that could befall me after the transfer of property. Plans to frame Isaiah for financial misconduct. Even sketches of how she wanted to remodel the house, starting with destroying Dad's garden. She would have killed me, I said flatly. She never would have gotten the chance, Isaiah growled, gripping the arm of his chair. The detective nodded grimly. This evidence upgrades the charges significantly. Combined with the fraud charges and attempted bribery, she's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. After he left, we sat in stunned silence until Aaliyah's phone buzzed again. "It's my contact at the DA's office," she said, reading the message. Holden just finished his statement. He's admitted to everything, including helping Haley access confidential company files before Dad's death. Did he know? I had to ask about her plans for me. No, Isaiah answered, scanning the documents. According to this, she kept that part to herself. Probably knew he wouldn't have the stomach for it. A thought struck me. Dad knew, didn't he? That's why he put all this in motion. Aaliyah nodded slowly. He suspected. That's why he hired the private investigators. Why he documented everything. He wasn't just protecting his legacy. He was protecting you. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden now swarming with news crews. The roses still bloomed, oblivious to the chaos their previous admirer had planned. "We should release a statement," Isaiah suggested. "Control the narrative before Haley's lawyers try to spin this." Already drafted. Aaliyah pulled out her laptop. A simple statement about cooperating with authorities and requesting privacy during this difficult time. Professional, dignified. Everything Haley wasn't. Dad would like that, I said, managing a small smile. "There's one more thing," Isaiah said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "I found this in Dad's personal safe. It's marked after justice is served." My hands shook as I opened it, recognizing Dad's handwriting once again. "My dear Maddie, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally come to light. Don't let this experience harden your heart. The garden still needs tending and life still needs living. I didn't set this trap just for justice. I did it so you could be free. Free from doubt, free from fear, and free to bloom again. Love, Dad." Outside, the reporters continued their live broadcasts, telling the world about the scandal, the arrests, the betrayal. But inside the study, surrounded by the evidence of my father's love and foresight, I finally felt something I hadn't experienced since finding Holden with Haley years ago. Peace. "So," Isaiah said, breaking the silence. "What now?" I looked at the roses outside, then at my brother and best friend. "Now we rebuild. Together." The preliminary hearing came faster than any of us expected. 1 month after the will reading, I found myself sitting in a courtroom, watching Haley and Holden being led in wearing orange jumpsuits, a far cry from their designer clothes. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Aaliyah squeezed my hand as we stood. She'd insisted on being both my lawyer and moral support, saying some moments required both legal expertise and friendship. "You don't have to speak today," she whispered. "The evidence speaks for itself." But I knew I had to. Dad's last letter had said not to let this harden my heart, and staying silent felt too much like fear. Haley's eyes locked onto mine as she passed our bench. The hatred in them was palpable, but something else flickered there too. Desperation. Her lawyer had been trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA wasn't budging, not with a mountain of evidence against her. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "the state would like to enter into evidence exhibits A through F, documenting a pattern of systematic fraud and conspiracy spanning 3 years. I watched as they displayed the photos, the bank statements, the recordings. Haley's face grew paler with each new piece of evidence. Holden just stared at his hands, shoulders slumped in defeat. The state calls Maddie Harrison to the stand. Walking to the witness box felt like crossing an ocean. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. The journalists scribbling in their notebooks, the jury leaning forward in anticipation, Haley's gaze burning into my back. "Please state your name for the record." "Maddie Harrison." "Can you tell us about your relationship with the defendants?" I took a deep breath, looking straight at Haley. Holden was my husband for 15 years. Haley was his secretary, and the woman he had an affair with. "And after your divorce, they married 6 months later? Then they started visiting your father, building a relationship with him while he was sick." Objection. Haley's lawyer stood. "Relevance. Goes to motive, Your Honor," the prosecutor countered. "Shows the systematic nature of their plan." Overruled. Continue. I described everything. The visits, the manipulation, Haley's threats in the garden, the evidence Dad had collected. With each word, I could see Haley's carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Miss Harrison, The prosecutor held up the documents found in Haley's apartment. When did you become aware of these plans regarding your safety? Objection. Haley's lawyer practically shouted. Those documents are circumstantial, Your Honor. These documents detail specific plans to harm the witness after gaining control of the estate. The judge peered at Haley over his glasses. Overruled. I learned about them after their arrest, I answered, my voice steady. My father suspected something like this might happen. That's why he gathered all the evidence. Why he changed his will. He was protecting me, even after he was gone. Haley suddenly stood up, her handcuffs rattling. He was a manipulative old man who couldn't stand to see his precious daughter lose anything. This whole thing is a setup. Miss West, sit down, the judge ordered. You think you've won? Haley shouted at me. You think this is over? I made your husband leave you once. I destroyed your marriage, and I'll find a way to destroy everything else too. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Bailiffs rushed to restrain Haley as she continued screaming threats. Holden looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Order. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Remove the defendant. As they dragged Haley away, still shouting, I caught Isaiah's eye in the gallery. He gave me a subtle nod. Everything she just said had been caught on the court record, destroying any chance of sympathy from the jury. The judge called a recess, and Aaliyah hurried me out of the courtroom. In the hallway, reporters clamored for comments, but she expertly steered me past them. Well, she said, once we were safely in a private room. I'd say that outburst just sealed their fate. Did you see Holden's face? Isaiah joined us, closing the door on the media circus outside. He finally saw her for what she really is. I sank into a chair, exhaustion hitting me all at once. Dad knew. He knew exactly how she would react when cornered. Because people like that can't stand losing control, Aaliyah said, pulling out her phone. The DA is texting me already. They want to move forward with additional charges based on her threats in court. How much time is she looking at now? 25 to 30 years minimum. Holden might get less with his cooperation, but he's still looking at 10 to 15. I thought about Dad's roses, still blooming in the garden he'd loved. He always said the truth finds its way to the light eventually. Speaking of truth, Isaiah said, there's something else you need to know about Dad's evidence. Something we found in his personal safe this morning. Back in Dad's study, Isaiah pulled out a weathered leather journal. The police found this when they were doing their final sweep of Haley's apartment. It was hidden in a false bottom of her desk drawer. What is it? I reached for the journal, but Isaiah held it back. Before you read this, you need to understand. Dad knew about this journal. It's why he was so certain about Haley's intentions. Aaliyah leaned forward. Is this what I think it is? Her playbook. Isaiah confirmed. Detailed accounts of every family she's targeted. Every scheme she's run, including her original plans for us. He opened the journal to a marked page and began reading. Asterisk, the Harrison family presents the perfect opportunity. Wealthy patriarch. Strained family relationships. Naive daughter who trusts too easily. The husband is the weak link, easily manipulated with flattery and attention. Asterisk. My stomach churned. Stop. You need to hear this, Maddie. Isaiah continued reading. Asterisk, phase 1 complete. Marriage destroyed. Phase 2. Isolate the daughter from her support system. Phase 3. Gain the father's trust. Final phase. Eliminate all obstacles. Permanently. Asterisk. That's when Dad confronted her, isn't it? I asked, remembering Dad's sudden insistence on updating his will. Aaliyah nodded. He showed me this journal 3 months ago. That's when we started building the case against her. But there's more, Isaiah said, flipping to another section. She wasn't working alone. There's a whole network of people involved in these schemes. Names, dates, bank accounts, everything. A sharp knock interrupted us. The detective from earlier entered, looking grimmer than before. We've been going through Miss West's contacts, he announced. Found something interesting about her past. She's not who she claims to be. He laid out a series of documents on Dad's desk. Birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, all with different names but the same face. Her real name is Margaret Phillips. She's wanted in 3 states for similar schemes. The FBI has been looking for her for years. Margaret Phillips. The name hit me like a physical blow. The woman who was convicted of killing that businessman in Florida? His death was ruled an accident, the detective corrected. But yes, same person. She served 5 years for fraud, got out, changed her identity, and started over. Your father was her biggest target yet. Aaliyah was already on her phone. I'm calling the DA. This changes everything. With these priors, she's looking at life in prison. There's something else, the detective added. We found this in her safety deposit box. He handed me a USB drive. It's footage of your father confronting her about the journal. Thought you might want to see it. With shaking hands, I plugged the drive into Dad's computer. His face filled the screen, sitting in this very study, looking directly at Haley. I know what you're planning, Margaret. Dad's voice was steel. I've read your little journal. Quite the career you've had, Margaret. Haley's face on the screen went white. How did you? Did you really think I wouldn't investigate the woman trying to destroy my family? I've known who you are since the day you started working for my company. Then why did I let you continue? Because sometimes the best way to catch a snake is to let it think it's winning. Dad leaned forward. You're finished, Margaret. Everything you've done, everyone you've hurt, it ends here. You're dying. Haley/Margaret spat. You can't stop me. Dad's laugh was cold. My dear, I already have. You just don't know it yet. The video ended, leaving us in stunned silence. He knew, I whispered. He knew everything right from the start. And he built an airtight case, Aaliyah added. One that would protect you and expose her entire network. The detective gathered his documents. The FBI wants to talk to you tomorrow. With this journal and your father's evidence, we can take down her whole organization. After he left, I walked to Dad's chair, running my hand along the worn leather. He let her think she was winning, all while making sure she'd never hurt anyone again. Classic Dad. Isaiah smiled. Always playing the long game. Aaliyah's phone buzzed. The DA just approved the new charges. They're upgrading it to a federal case. Haley, or Margaret, will never see the outside of a prison again. I picked up Dad's journal from his desk, the one he'd kept all his life, and opened it to his last entry. Asterisk, sometimes justice takes patience. Sometimes it takes sacrifice. But most importantly, it takes faith in the truth. Maddie will understand when the time comes. The garden will bloom again, stronger than before, asterisk. The preliminary hearing resumes tomorrow, Aaliyah said softly. Are you ready to finish this? I looked at the evidence spread across the desk, at Dad's journal, at the garden beyond the window where all this began. Yes, I said. It's time to end this. For Dad. For everyone she's ever hurt. And for me. And for you, Isaiah added. Mostly for you. The gavel's final crack echoed through the courtroom like thunder. In light of the overwhelming evidence and the additional federal charges, this court sentences Margaret Phillips, also known as Haley West, to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Haley/Margaret stood rigid in her orange jumpsuit, all traces of her former polished facade gone. When they led her past our bench, she stopped, turning to face me one last time. I hope you're happy, she hissed. You've ruined everything. No, I replied calmly. You did that yourself. The only difference is that this time, your target fought back. The bailiff pulled her away as she tried to respond. Behind her, Holden was already being led out to begin his own 15-year sentence. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, but Aaliyah's firm voice cut through the chaos. My client has no comment except to say that justice has been served, not just for her family, but for all the families affected by these crimes. Back at the house, Isaiah was waiting with a surprise. The FBI finished processing Dad's study. They found this hidden in his desk. He handed me a small box. Inside was a single key and a note. For when justice blooms, check the greenhouse. The greenhouse had always been Dad's private sanctuary, a place he retreated to when he needed to think. I hadn't been inside since his death. Want us to come with you? Aaliyah asked. I shook my head. I need to do this alone. The greenhouse key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the scent of blooming flowers. Dad's prized orchids still thrived, clearly tended by someone, probably Isaiah during these past months. In the center of the greenhouse stood Dad's workbench, and on it, a large envelope with my name on it. Inside was a deed, and another letter, with my name on it. Inside was a deed, and another letter. My dearest Maddie, by now, justice has been served, and the truth has come to light. But justice wasn't the only thing I wanted to cultivate in this greenhouse. Here, I grew more than flowers. I grew hope. Hope for you to find your strength again. To bloom, despite the shadows others cast. The deed in this envelope is for the vacant lot next to your old flower shop. I bought it the day after I confronted Margaret. It's time for Harrison Gardens to grow beyond our home. Your talent for bringing beauty into the world shouldn't be limited to one garden. Remember what I taught you. Some flowers bloom best after frost. You've weathered your winter, Maddie. Now it's time to bloom again. Love always, Dad. I walked back to the house in a daze, clutching the deed and letter. Isaiah and Aaliyah were waiting in the kitchen. Well, Isaiah asked. I spread the deed on the counter. He bought me the lot next to my old shop. He wanted me to expand the business. That's not all he did. Aaliyah pulled out her tablet. The Harrison Gardens trademark was registered 6 months ago. He set up everything. Business plans, permits, funding. All it needs is you. And us, Isaiah added. I've learned a thing or two about gardening these past months. Someone had to keep his orchids alive. A knock at the door interrupted us. The detective entered, looking pleased. Just thought you'd want to know. 3 more victims of Margaret's schemes have come forward with their testimony. And with your father's evidence, we're looking at closing over a dozen cold cases. Dad would have liked that, I said. He always believed every truth finds its light eventually. Speaking of truth, Isaiah said after the detective left. I found something else while tending the greenhouse. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a small plaque hidden among the orchids. The inscription read, "For Maddie, who taught me that the strongest flowers grow in broken places." He put that there right after my divorce, I realized. He knew even then that I'd find my way back. So, Aaliyah said, pulling out her legal pad with a familiar glint in her eye. Should I start drawing up the business papers for Harrison Gardens? I looked out at Dad's garden, where the roses still bloomed despite everything that had happened. Beyond them, I could see the future he'd planned for me. Not just justice, but growth. Not just survival, but flourishing. Yes, I said, feeling stronger than I had in years. It's time to grow something new. To Dad, Isaiah raised his coffee mug. To justice, Aaliyah added, raising hers. I picked up my own mug, thinking of orchids and roses, of truth and time, of endings and beginnings, to blooming again. Through the window, the garden glowed in the afternoon sun, each flower a testament to Dad's belief that beauty can grow even in life's hardest soil. He'd given me more than justice. He'd given me back my future, one bloom at a time. This journey has been unimaginable. What would you have done if you discovered your loved one had meticulously planned out your vindication, even after they were gone? Have you ever had to choose between letting go or fighting for a legacy? Share your thoughts below.